Hello everyone, I am Tacit, and today I'm going to be going over the Gems of War event objectives for the Long Hiss Goodnight event, in which the Cascabel is added to the game. So this week is a little bit tamer compared to last week, but we still have a handful of things going on, most notably being the Green Doom, and of course it's still being pretty early into the new campaign, so if you haven't finished out those tasks, get all the one-time rewards for the campaign. Still plenty of time to do so. You still got a whole another 9 weeks, but of course whenever you do get them done, you do get the rewards immediately from those tiers, so nice to have. But yeah, mostly a Green Doom week. We do have a new faction expansion coming in this Friday as well, for that of Midnight, which is one of the last few we even need at this point. Going to be bringing in this new troop, the Dark Acrobat, which can be used for a 4 times Midnight team if you want to go down that route. Generally, you end up doubling up on the one troop that gains a bunch of durability, so you might not necessarily need to run him, but if you want to offset a little bit, it is definitely an option, especially with a 50% mana start, so we can get off the ground a little bit better. But we'll go over him a little bit more once we get over to the teams. Only other thing to mention then is, of course, for Tower of Doom, with any Doom event, it is generally worth buying up to tier 4, which is 500 gems. This ends up giving you the weapon, as well as some of the Doom copies and a bunch of the Forge Scrolls. But you're mostly doing this for the weapon, as you do need to have it on your team for double score. It does not need to be upgraded, though you can throw one of those Forging Orbs on it and instantly get upgraded. However, just simply having it on your team will end up giving you 2 times score, and then from there you basically just go and scout out with your guild where all the rooms are. It is the same across your entire guild, not between guild to guild, but within your own guild. All the battles are exactly the same, so you normally want to report back where all the unlocked scrolls are, fireballs, heroisms, and anything else of importance. Report back to your guild so everyone knows where everything is. And it plays out pretty much the same way as you always would. Just go to floor 25th completion, basically until you reach floor 26, and you'll get the maximum amount of scrolls and all the other rewards, as well as if everyone in your guild does that, you'll easily be able to get all of the stage rewards for full completion. With all that out of the way, let's go into teams for everything. We do have quite a bit because we do have a faction event this weekend, which has a completely different coloration compared to the one that we have for this Tuesday event. But let's start from the top, going with Green Doom. Of course, for Green Doom, we have to use, well, a 4 times green team. And of course, you do have to use the Doomed weapon, or at least if you want double score. So as far as our first team here, we are using a pretty standard, just try to feed mana into a Flower Dragon or Stellarex build using Leprechaun. Really great. We have access to Leprechaun. We have access to Bog Strider to be able to go get a ton of mana accumulation right off the bat. We have Beatrix here for cleanse, as well as a little bit extra damage, but we're primarily just using whatever our biggest damage source is here in second slot. Obviously, it doesn't have to be a Flower Dragon. It can be whatever else you want that happens to be a good damage source. In this kind of context, you could even use double Beatrix if you needed to, and just get that from the faction. If you don't already have this, you just throw a bunch of Chaos Shards at Deep Hive, and you easily get your double Beatrix, and then burning that as your primary damage source. We end up going down that route, of course, for the lower rarity team, where we end up using a Bog Strider into Leprechaun build, pretty standard, similar to Thrall Leprechaun, in order to gain a bunch of mana accumulation. Only big downside with Bog Strider does have a little bit of a higher mana cost initially. However, it does come with the benefit of having Skull and Tangle, as well as some score reduction, making it a far better first slot compared to Thrall or even Bork for that matter. So I guess to just mash destroy while being relatively safe for not dying. And of course, similar to the other team, we're using Beatrix as a damage source here, but also for its cleanse utility. You can put a different damage source here if you have something better, but Beatrix is very accessible. Leprechaun just for its first mana accumulation with Empower, be able to go and explode for a bunch of mana accumulation. And then of course the weapon, because we have to have it. You could use this in more of a tank position, however, Bog Strider should be tanky enough even in early game between its Entangle and everything, so it should be fine just going with that. But you can put it a little bit further up if you find that your Bog Strider is dying a little bit too much. Might just be a little bit harder to end up getting mana for your Beatrix to get it off the ground. But if you do find you're dying too much, you can end up replacing it out, or even go for a tank hero class. We're using Archer here for Green Storm, but you could go something tankier and move it further forward. It just might be blocking your mana a little bit more otherwise. For the faction event, we have 2 of them this week. The Tuesday one, which is what these teams are for, is a green-brown restriction for Dark Pits for the Mist of Scales restriction. So for this first team, we're just kind of running pretty standard, just quick kill Rowain build, either double Rowain, double Leprechaun, just trying to get off the ground as quickly as possible, doing the mass mana accumulation on turn 1, and just using a Black Manacle in the Rowain. Pretty standard Rowain build. As far as the higher rarity team, we are going for a Leprechaun into Wand of Stars as our main mana accumulation option, and then using 2 damage sources in between. For this, we're using a Maelstrom Dagonoth and a Catharix, both the 2 power orb ones with insta-kill. However, you can, of course, downgrade to whatever you have underneath the green and brown category that you have for a decent amount of damage. Just make sure whatever you end up putting here does end up upscaling for whatever the faction is. Could even use Beatrix from earlier. Beatrix with like one other thing would be perfectly fine as well. But it's basically this Wand of Stars Leprechaun into whatever your best 2 damage sources are within the green-brown restriction. And for pure faction here, we're doing Sludge Paw, Plague Rat into double Hex Rat. Hex Rat is your main primary damage source. You cast this on the first slot and it'll deal damage to everything below it. And that's pretty much the whole plan here, is just keep casting that over and over again onto the first slot of the enemy. Plague Rat has a bunch of mana accumulation. It'll be your main mana accumulator. And Sludge Paw, you basically just have here to tank. You actually don't really want to cast his ability if you can help it. If you have like really good board control or just something you can end up doing with it, then you definitely can cast it. But for the most part, he's kind of just here to tank. Not the tankiest of things, but he is the tankiest within the context of the faction, so he's the best you kind of have to work with. But yeah, you want to avoid generally casting his ability as much as possible, as Plague Rat into Hex Rats is your main core win condition. He's mostly just here to make sure you don't die as quickly. As far as the Assassin class event, this is specifically Naga's from Mist of Scales. This is for the Thursday class event if you want to go claim the free 25 gems. For this, we're just running basically all in Marilith. She has a bunch of Mana Link, Fire Link into herself, or into this weapon in this case, and just does a bunch of Mass Destroy similar to Box Strider, Thrall, Bork, all the similar. It's not used as much these days due to its higher mana cost compared to some of the others, but it does get that nice little bit of chip damage of the true damage, as well as a little bit of attack gain, but most of the true damage comes in nice and handy to chip them down into better range. So we're just using something that hits all enemies, and if this isn't enough to kill, you just chip them even further with the Marilith and get them down. And you basically just get your Marilith up, keep spamming them. You can even offset by 1 if you really want to, and just get this mana a little bit quicker. And we're just basically using the best mana, or best weapon we can for overall damage. It can pretty much be anything here: Black Mana Gold, Dawnbringer, whatever you want to run. The Ruby weapon, they all end up working out really good. I just happen to put the Dawnbringer here for this particular team. But whatever you have that you can, just end up running it and just use Marilith to mana accumulate it. You can also go the other way around if you want to mana accumulate a little bit quicker, though your Marilith will die a little bit easier. But with higher stats, it shouldn't really die, at least for if you're just doing like the free gems for class event. If you go a little bit deeper than that, then you definitely want to tank with hero. As far as the Underspire is concerned, this is specifically anything from Mist of Scales. However, it is also Mist of Scales weapon restriction. This is going to be a very, very free Underspire this week. The main reason being is we do have access to Takshaka. So if you have a bunch of these, if you have even just one, going to make it very, very easy to go do the event, because Cobra's Curse into a single Takshaka, or as many as you have, is a very, very, very strong combination. This case, we're doing 1 Box Strider, offset it just with a double Takshaka instead of going all in on triple. But you can also do it either way. But you can even get away with just 1 and just put more mana accumulation onto the team. Will be perfectly fine. But the main premise here is the Cobra's Curse into the Takshaka. Cobra's Curse is one of the few weapons that create 2 colors that feeds back into itself. It creates green and red, and it itself does use green. So you are getting that mana directly back into your hero, which is great. Beyond that, of course, we also have the blue-green creation off of Takshaka, blue going back into itself, and green going into your Box Strider and the weapon. So you basically just keep doing this back and forth, since the red from this goes into your Takshaka, with the green going back into itself, and then Takshaka does similar, where the blue goes back into itself and the green goes into your weapon. You just keep doing these back and forth until you win, and the other 2 slots are just to offset for speed, whatever you happen to have to speed up the battle. For the lower rarity team, of course, we can't end up running Takshaka. I did go with Vinoxia here. Vinoxia is a legend, however, it is a legend that is in event key drop table this week. So if you happen to not have it, just throwing couple hundred event keys should be able to go get yourself a Vinoxia if you don't already have one. It'll also get you Marilith along the way as well, which is nice. But yeah, it's basically budget Takshaka. Once you have Takshaka, you're basically never really going to be running Vinoxia much again. Between things like Beatrix, Takshaka, similar things, you just don't really need it as much in the current state of the game. However, if you are lacking those options, most notably the Takshaka, since this is Mist of Scales restriction, then this is a perfectly fine alternative. It just creates a bunch of green and blue, the green going back into itself, the blue going into something else on your team, which we're actually using the new Glory Troop, oddly enough, in this team. We're using Marilith for the mass mana accumulation, similar as before. This is the same thing, but now has true damage to chip into the true damage that you already have. Instead of doing physical true damage, you have double true. You can do similar on the other team if you go Ruby weapon for the where'd it go? For the Assassin class. I didn't want to show it here because Ruby weapon is a little bit harder to obtain, but of course you do have the double true damage if you go Marilith into Ruby, so worth considering if you're doing that event as well. But beyond that, where were we? Oh yeah, Underspire Low. But yeah, we're just doing this to have the double true damage into a bunch of mana accumulation. Obviously, Box Strider doing the same thing, having this really tankiness with his Entangle and Score Reduction, into getting the ball rolling with our double green, as even though our banner is set to +2 red, +1 green, meaning we only have 1 green, we actually do have a second green because the new Glory Troop. So the new Glory Troop honestly isn't amazing, but in the context of a lot of like low to mid rarity teams that you might be running, can end up doing some decent stuff. One thing that it has that's nice is Green Link. While the rest of its traits are absolutely abysmal, Green Link does allow you to set a banner like this, where you can go with all of our extra manas. We're actually at a +3 red into +2 green. So we didn't actually have to go a +2 green banner that you normally would want to do when going a Black Strider team. So you can offset it with this green. So we could set a +1 green in order to put that color somewhere else. In this case, red, so that we could 2-turn our Marilith a little bit better. So it ends up working out nice, because in total, of course, 2 green, 3 red. So we could 2-turn Marilith, and we could 1-turn Black Strider, assuming we surge. As far as this troop, it ends up dealing some true damage to an enemy, and if it dies, it will inflict a bunch of negative status effects to all other enemies. Unfortunately, this is going to be pretty inconsistent, but it can be kind of useful, since you can go and get them into chip range with Vinoxia and Marilith, and then once one of them is in chip range, particularly the first slot, if they took some skull damage as well, you could end up going for the hit, and end up getting a bunch of negative status effects on everything that is still alive on the opposing team. Of course, it could be anything from something actually useful, like Silence, to something completely pointless, like just a single poison. But yeah, it's not that bad. Not the greatest troop in the world, but for a lower rarity team can definitely help out a lot, with its mana link being, oddly enough, one of the more particularly useful things on it. But its ability's not that bad. I just wish I had a little bit of mana accumulation or extra turn potential beyond just nothing. As far as the weekend faction event, we do have 2 of them, of course. One on Tuesday, as we mentioned earlier, for green-brown for Dark Pits. But we also have a weekend one taking place on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday for that of Nightmare Circus. We also showed the troop earlier. It'll be bringing in this new troop as well as the new Deep Delve layout. It ends up dealing a bunch of damage to 2 random enemies and gives a bunch of life to 2 random allies. And then both of those are boosted by the amount of Terror Gems. This is perfectly fine to put it into your team if you want to run a 4x version, as this is definitely better than the other troop you otherwise would have ran for a 4x team. Otherwise, if you want to play it a little bit safer, it is still better to double up on the tank troop, that one brown-purple, that gains a bunch of life and attack, as in case one of those dies, having a backup for that is still pretty auto-win on the final fight. But if you do want to go for the full amount of extra team bonus for running 4x Midnight, 4x, what is Midnight associated to? Oh yeah, to, gosh, why did I forget its name? It's Dark Circus. But it's the circus that it is, and it's associated to Midnight. That's why I forgot for a second. It's the Nightmare Circus that is being added to, but is associated to the Midnight Kingdom. But anyways, if you use a team of all 4, of course, you get a team bonus for both 4x Midnight, but also for 4x Nightmare Circus. So if you are going to want to have those extra stats, he's perfectly fine to go run into one of those teams. Actually, we're kind of talking a little bit early, but it's for this team over here, of course. We have normal double strongman. He gains a bunch of attack and life. Anything that ever gains a bunch of attack into a durability gain is pretty much auto win. This whole team could just be one strongman and you'd be perfectly fine. Everything else is just to support it. The second strongman is in case the first one dies. But as we were mentioning earlier, that new red-blue troop can be placed onto this team. However, if you are going to put it on the team, make sure to put it back a little bit. You're either going to want to have it all the way in your last slot, the new red-blue that's going to be coming in, or you want to have it just behind your line, either or. So don't put it in front of your line, because you want to make sure you have your +2 red going into your fire line. One off the banner, one off of Firelink, doing it similar to the other team we were showing earlier. But we need to have that so we can end up getting his mana accumulation up quicker, so we can get the Terror Gems and start getting everything else on the team rolling, as well as all the Terror Boost ratio that pretty much everything on the team ends up having, including the new troop, if you are incorporating that into the team. Just make sure you don't block your line, and probably put it in the last slot so you're just not blocking anything, as the core of the team is Strongman to keep gaining a bunch of stats, Fireline to go get all your Terror Gems as well as all your mana accumulation, and Ringmaster to do a bunch of skull spam, which is also boosted by the Terror Gems in play, which of course you end up creating off the Fire Lion. So it ends up working out pretty well. As far as the 2 teams associated with the event, it is a red-purple restriction, though of course weapon can be anything. As far as first team, we're running pretty standard Atlanta team, just doing a Leprechaun to get it rolling. Atlanta with a 75% mana start and mana link into herself gets rolling really quickly, and just doing that, which is a nice cheap weapon to go and do it with, just in this case Black Manacle, and they all just hit all enemies simultaneously. For the higher rarity team, we're basically just using a pretty standard Thorel Leprechaun into whatever your best damage source is. You can downgrade as low as around Tesla or so, because of course that can just upscale through the entire thing. And of course you can upgrade as far as like Flower Dragon or something similar, just an insta-kill troop. But just basic standard Thorel Leprechaun, wand for even more mana accumulation, or you can go a second damage source, and just being the best damage source. With Tesla being probably the bare minimum, and the highest option being any insta-kill troop that you can end up slotting there that you have laying around. And that is all the teams for the week, all which are in the description below and pinned comment if you want to go and copy paste any of them. Next, let's go to Soulforge. I didn't actually peek at this earlier, so let's see. We got the Bunny Nog from the old Easter thingy. Sakurax is actually kind of nice. So Sakurax, very rarely is it used, but if there's ever a really good HP boost ratio trip to be added to the game, this thing's going to get a lot of usage out of it. It's basically like all of the trolls in the game where it doubles a certain color, but you get to choose the color. It doubles a chosen color on the board and then creates 3 more of that color and gives a bunch of life to all allies. The big issue with this is all the other ones only have a 12 mana cost, and this is a whopping 25. However, it has the flexibility of course, being able to target whatever the highest color is. Let's say we're using like a Forest Troll, which is a brown-blue that doubles for 12 mana cost, all the green plus 3. Of course, let's say there's only like 5 green on the board. So that's not going to do that much in that situation, whereas this thing, even though it's like more than double that mana cost, you could target a different color. Like if blue's at 12 and green's only at 5, obviously you're going to want to do blue instead of green in that situation, whereas all the other trolls cannot choose what they get to do. They're just locked to that one color, whereas he's flexibility to do any of them. Generally, you're targeting either blue, green, or brown, whatever's most populated, as you do want to make sure that the mana goes back to this. However, you of course can choose the other 3 colors. It's just these 3 tend to be the better 3 to end up putting it into, and any kind of life boost ratio team that can end up incorporating that into future is pretty nice. I think the best one that can kind of use it right now is Death, because you can do that over top of blue, but there isn't really anything too over the top that this life boost ratio can really be used for. Normally armor boost ratios or other boost ratios within the game tend to get far better value than life, but if we ever get something absolutely amazing for a life boost ratio, this thing will just skyrocket in usability. So having that for that purpose can be kind of nice if you have the spare resources to go and get it. Also, is impervious, which is pretty nice, though its final trait unfortunately does not trigger on extra turn, which would have been perfect. It only ends up doing at starter turn, which is kind of counterproductive given that this thing basically wants the infinite extra turn with a really counterproductive final trait that only benefits you when you lose your turn, essentially. Beyond that, Quetzalma, not really that worth it. Pretty meh. Even in pure strict restriction, I didn't really feel like we were really using it much. This one, Legend, while probably not worth going out of your way for, is a slightly cheaper way to do Wish Gem mechanic. For the most part, it's a little bit too inconsistent to really bother because the enemy can also get value from it. You always need to make sure you have some kind of way to end up cracking the Wish Gem every single time. But there's not too many good low rarity Wish Gem mechanics, or even any low rarity Wish Gem mechanics. So it tends to be kind of like one of those mid-range ones that can end up being used there. Dragonite Mirror, you weren't one of the old thingies, were you? Do a bunch of true damage to the last 2 enemies, boosted by Dragon Gems. We have this, right? I'm trying to remember if this is one of the really old, weird ones that end up coming in from PvP. Dragonite Amira, because that name seems new to me. Dragonite Amira. No, we end up already having it. Okay, just making sure. It's not one of like the weird PvP ones. Dragon Knights. Yeah, we already have it. Okay. Why did I forget this thing? I could have sworn that was one of the PvP ones. Apparently not. I just want to make sure I don't end up missing one of them, because those only do come in Soulforge. So you can't end up getting them through event keys or anything else. Yeah, that seems to be pretty much everything. Archdruid Blackwood, I guess, is maybe worth mentioning. There are some really rare circumstances you can bring this out. The main thing that it has going for it is it creates 2 Entangle Gems per turn while having Impervious. So there are some very niche situations where you want more green gems, but also can end up getting benefit of entangling the entire enemy team, where he's okay to end up running. Very niche, but it's not bad. It's one of those things in the like create gem every single turn kind of category. And these things, when they create a decent amount of them like this, is not that bad at all. It's also one of the first few times, I think, since he's been out, where you could really go and mass buy him if you haven't already gotten like your double or triple copy, if you wanted to run multiple on a given team. But anyways, as far as weapons, Cobra's Curse, main thing to mention. It is among one of the best weapons that create double color, because it's one of the only few that feeds back into itself, similar to Stone Slicer and I want to say 1 or 2 others, I forget the full list. But Cobra's Curse is one of those on that list, in that it creates green while using green, so really good in that regard. Really great synergy with that of Takshaka, which is the main use case that you would end up using it for. Medusa's Tome could be okay too, but similar to, or unlike the other one, it doesn't end up feeding back into itself, so you're generally going down the Cobra's Curse for pretty much everything this week, regardless what team you end up running. And just to double check, I don't think there's anything else here, but it's not needed for the Ruby weapon, nope. And it's not needed for Dustbringer. Pretty sure I already know for sure, I just want to make sure. But nope, neither of them are used. So yeah, it's basically just Cobra's Curse, and it's whatever else he wants to go upgrade the kingdom, but Cobra's Curse is the only one you kind of want to make sure you have. As you do use it beyond this week as well. While it is very useful for Underspire this week, you do tend to use it quite a bit for any kind of 4x Naga team. It's just, you know, during a week like this tends to be one of the easier times to use it because you can use it for Missa skills as well, for various Missa skills restriction. It also works really good for future Naga restrictions whenever applicable. Speaking of restrictions, since Guild War just ended, we do know the restriction for next Guild War already. Unfortunately, I can't see the shiny trooper yet. However, we can see the, that's not the one to check, the restriction right over here. It is Golvania. So, Golvania, what does Golvania have going for? Let's go check. Obviously, we're not going to go over a bunch of teams right now. We've got a few weeks before we have to deal with that quite yet. Makes sense as well for a Halloween theme, as, of course, October next month. But Grey King's going to be kind of funny. Really hard counter. Also, that reminds me, oh, we don't have the calendar for next month. I can't actually check. I was going to say, do we have any event where we can go get, like, Golvania troops or something? I sure hope so. Because otherwise, yeah, there might not be as many good teams you could end up running. But yeah, some of the more noteworthy ones for the upcoming Guild War include Grey King. So if you see this in Soulforge the next few weeks, you might want to pick it up. Going to be a really solid one. By far the strongest mythic for it. Ends up hard countering pure color. He ends up doing a bunch of true damage, as well as mana drain, silencing, and freeze based on whatever color you choose. So it'll end up destroying all that gems of that color, let's say brown, but then it'll also apply all the sass effects to all the browns on the opposing team. Really good at countering teams that use a lot of the same color, especially if they're 4 times the same, but even if they're double-double, if you can get like a double-double on them, still ends up working out really well. So having access to that's going to be great. Budget options using Crimson Bat, if you have it laying around, can be pretty decent just for true damage. Also does really high amount of damage to Divine, but also does 2 times skull damage against basically everything in the game, because once they have even 1 HP missing, it starts doing 2 times damage to them, assuming it's not stunned, as well as up to 4 times damage with between the 2 of them to Divines that are also damaged, which is pretty nice. There's 50% mana start to all undead, which given that this whole place is pretty much undead, you tend to use a lot. Anything else kind of in this category? We do have the Undead Sentinel, which honestly wouldn't be that bad if you have access to it as like a frontline tank, which you can end up getting randomly from Underspire stuff if you have that laying around. You have Corpse Mirror too for super budget as well. Obviously you normally use this for bounty hunter events, but if you really had to go mega budget, you would be perfectly fine if you had to go scrap that together to try to build a team out of it. But yeah, that's going to be kind of rough otherwise, because of the Flower Dragon here, you can't really build as well into. Especially with that high of a mana cost. This place doesn't have that many good mana accumulation options. Not to mention you can't 50% mana start it since it's not undead. You do have Perpetual Purple Storm under Umbra Wolf, which is not too bad, but probably not worth running over other more higher damage source options. So yeah, it's going to be a little bit clunky. Definitely not as easy as the most recent red restriction we had, that's for sure. Especially if you're missing some of the core option like the Grey King or even the 50% mana start undead guy, as it's going to be a lot rougher to end up building a team, that's for sure. So hopefully once we have the calendar, which we'll hopefully know by next week, we'll know what the schedule is, and hopefully there's a Golvania event in the next 3 weeks, because we're going to need it if you're missing some of those core options, because the next best team, if you have to build like Corpse Mirror into Crimson Bat, not ideal. It would work, but not ideal at all. But we'll just have to wait and see, and we'll know more by next week. Anyways, other things we have going on, we kind of already went over these earlier, but Fangmore event for, what is that, Green-Brown restriction is tomorrow. Wednesday event, we have one of the old events, pets coming in from the Kingdom. Thursday, we have the class event for Assassins. Assassins, basically the RNG dice roll class, has a lot of really lucky mechanics, like 10% insta-kill to last slot whenever you take a skull, 7% insta-kill whenever you end up getting a kill on the enemy once you have it fully maxed out, which does stack with the 10%, so you could trigger 10% into a 7%, into a 7%, into a 7% if you were to get really lucky, where your 10% skull ends up doing the 10% to kill the last slot, and then you just get a big chain reaction off the 7% for the kill every single time that you end up triggering a kill. So it can do some really crazy stuff. Also has 30% skull dodge if you end up going down that route. It's basically just a lot of RNG rolls. It's really good when it works properly, but it is way too luck-based to ever consistently run for any reason, so it's pretty much never ran. But it's a very fun class. It's either going to auto-win a battle or do nothing, and there's pretty much nothing in between, and it's just way too inconsistent compared to many of the other strong hero classes that will always do really good guarantee value, so you don't need to worry about the luck-based aspects that Assassin has. And then Friday, as we mentioned, we have the weekend Nightmare Circus, which is a red-purple restriction, which will also be bringing in that new guy we were talking about earlier, the Dark Acrobat guy, which is perfectly fine to run in a team. Just make sure he's not blocking your Fire Line guy, as you do need to make sure he's not blocking on red. You might even want to make sure you don't block the other guys. Just put him in your last slot, he'll be fine. Just make sure, definitely do not block your Lion with him, as you definitely don't want to block that red. It is way better in the mana accumulator than it is on that really small damage poke that he has. But it's still nice, give you a little bit extra HP to your team and stuff like that. That's pretty much everything we have going on this week. Beyond that, we already went over Tower of Doom, but of course, make sure to report back to all your better teams to your guild. Make sure to use the weapon if you end up getting it for that double score. It doesn't need to be upgraded, but does need to be on your team. And yeah, plays the same as any other Tower of Doom event. And oh yeah, chess. So event key drop table. What is and is not in drop table? Let's go to the list. So Kingdom, Mist of Skills. Summer's in here. Alphabetical order. How do you work? There it is. Show all. Base rarity. Okay, so everything that is not in drop table includes the following. The 4 to 5 faction troops from Dark Pits are not in drop table. That's from throwing Chaos Shards at the Dark Pits faction. The tarot card of, I saw it here earlier, the World is only in the Vault Key drop table. It is not in the Event Key drop table. And beyond that, is that it? Yeah, that's the only things that are not in drop table. Okay, that's not too many. Oh yeah, this is also the first time you have to go get Shiny Viper since it's been shinied. It's not really that worth it. Even if you got it max shiny, it is not that good. However, if you happen to have gotten it max shiny, but you don't have a copy of it, well, now's your chance to go get it. The only extra benefit it gets from being max shiny is it also gets a stun, so it deals damage to an enemy and then poison stuns and charms them. So not that much of a benefit, just a free stun on it. And of course, at no shiny, it's 14 mana cost, and at max shiny, it is as low as 12. And if you got the basic shininess from getting 18 out of 20 wins for the last Guild War, it'll be in between at that 13. Still completely useless, even if completely maxed, though, unfortunately. The main reason you would want to open event keys is probably just to get some utility troops for the week, like Vinoxia if you're lower rarity and don't have Takshaka, Marilith for just that mass mana accumulation option. You probably already have it laying around, but the Comet Box Strider, go get that max for its mass destroy, because the more he's upgraded, the more destroy you get. So being able to get a max if you don't want to use a blue orb on it can be pretty good too. Of course, the biggest thing that is in drop table is the Takshaka. However, there are 4 to 5 other mythics. The one that I'm not 100% sure if it's in drop table is Bothras. However, I don't think anyone is trying to go get a Bothras. He was from a couple months ago for the mythic for the month, and he is really bad. He's in the category of insta-kill troop that has nowhere near enough insta-kill troop or insta-kill option, nor any follow-up, so it's just completely useless basically in most contexts. But if he's not in drop table, that would actually be beneficial because that would mean you'd have a higher chance of Takshaka. Otherwise, it's 1 in 5,000 approximately event keys per Takshaka, which is not worth it. It's a problem that a lot of kingdoms are starting to get when there's only like 1 or 2 good options, but there's so many mythics in the kingdom now that it's so hard to target any good one because everything else here is basically useless. This is an insta-kill troop that doesn't have a high enough insta-kill option. This is the best poisoner in the game, but you very rarely ever need that utility option. There's many other ways to poison. This member, Mombasera, is basically just a weaker version of a lot of other things that hit multiple things simultaneously. Even a lot of the Immortals end up doing this better from PvP. And speaking of Immortals, this has Curse Stun on extra turn, which might sound familiar because Immortal Ossifer ends up doing this, but better. Immortal Ossifer has a better ability, has better trait setup because it has the invulnerable thing instead of just impervious, so it's immune to basically everything in the game, including insta-kill and such. So, yeah, there's basically no reason to ever use Medusa unless you're, I guess, under Kingdom Restriction or want to run it like Tech Chakra or something. But it's basically just a weaker Immortal Ossifer. And yeah, the only thing that's good here is absurdly good, the Takshaka, which of course is good enough to just completely solo teams. With its ability, does a huge amount of true damage per cast at double skill off its magic, and then ends up creating a mix of blue and green, which not only feeds into itself, that feeds into many useful green troops, but on top of all that, just for its final trait alone is often used for in 2 or 3 of them on a team in order to create a 3x wild card, which counts as every single color, and when matched ends up counting for 3 times that amount of mana. Really good, particularly in feeding 6 colored options, most notably Wanderstar, Stellarix, and Flower Dragon are the 3 most commonly used ones with it. Of course, used in pretty standard quick kill teams, like we have one right over here, using a Stellarix quick kill with Wanderstars, and where's our Flower Dragon one? And we have, obviously, Flower Dragon variants of it. Actually, this ends up going down Pharaoh. But of course, this can end up being double Takshaka as well in order to feed into something like a Flower Dragon with a 50% mana started. And yeah, just really great mana accumulation option. Among one of the better ones in the game compared to like Pharaoh and a few others that are also in that category. Main benefit of this compared to a lot of the others is it's the best one for mana accumulation that can completely stand alone, as a lot of the other ones kind of struggle to win a battle if they were left alone, like one single Pharaoh, while it does have Deathmark and a few other things going for it. It's very luck-based if you can actually get kills, and if they have immune to Deathmark, this thing basically can only do damage with skulls, and you're kind of denying your skulls as you keep doing board control with his ability. So when he's the only thing left, you're kind of in trouble, especially if they have immune to Death Mark. Whereas Takshaka, you could just have one on your team and be perfectly fine. Like your whole team's one Takshaka and you just won a battle, as long as he doesn't get frozen, hopefully. And hopefully, ideally, not stunned either. But he can just solo entire battles and he's pretty much just good to go. But also has a strong enough final trait that even if this was the only thing he did, it would still be viable. So it's basically in the weird in-between where it is both a support troop for its final trait, and that could be the only thing it could do, and you'd still get full value from it. But is also so strong that even if he had no final trait or any traits at all, his ability alone is also enough to solo a battle. So between those two factors, it's a lot better for PvP-like situations. So whenever you're building a PvP team, you tend to use it more often. It's why you don't really normally see me running Pharaoh too much whenever I run PvP, as Takshaka, if the battle starts going south, is a lot better standalone troop, as it is way better at making a comeback if like your whole team dies. Like skull spam up front, this thing has score reduction, so it won't die as easily to that, and can just win out the battle from there. Whereas things like Pharaoh, Explodes, and even Boom Pile for that matter, can't really stand alone as strong as a Takshaka can. So it ends up working out really good for that. But yeah, that's in event keys, but your chance of getting it is so low that I probably wouldn't bother. It's better just to wait and just save up like 8,000 diamond and try to get it in Soulforge and go get a double Takshaka later down the line. There are teams that can be functioning off of 1, 2, and 3. Technically even 4 if you want to run that for Underspire this week. But 1, 2, and 3 Takshaka teams tend to be the limit. You're perfectly fine just getting 2. It's very rarely you ever need 3. But yeah, any amount of them tends to work out really, really well. And it's definitely something you want to get your hands on at some point, as it's a great mana accumulation damage source that's ran for pretty much every game mode. And it's very useful for this week, though trying to get off event keys this week, not really that viable. And lastly, we kind of already briefly went over it on the one team, as we did actually use it for a team for once, as the Glory Troop is not completely useless. Unfortunately, later in the game, the answer is yes, it is completely useless. But if you're early or mid-game, this honestly isn't that bad. It deals a bunch of true damage to an enemy, and if they die, it ends up doing a bunch of negative stats effects to all other enemies. Obviously, when you compare this to Takshaka, this is like the worst thing in existence. However, at a low rarity range, when you're running this with like Marilith, when you're running it with Vinoxia, it's perfectly fine. Vinoxia feeds blue back into this, which is great, as well as green back into it if you get overflow green. So it ends up working out really well with Vinoxia. Biggest issue this has is mostly just no mana accumulation or extra turn follow-up. It has no extra turn on insta-kill, or when it gets a kill, it has no mana accumulation. Like, it doesn't create green or blue or anything else to go with it. Does have Green Link, which ends up working out really well, because normally you're using it with Vinoxia or Takshaka or something similar, so you will be getting those green extra mana. But yeah, I guess to do a few extra negative stats effects to the entire enemy team whenever you get a kill. It's unfortunate that it can be as low as 1. But if you do end up rolling 2 or 3, and you end up rolling some of the better ones like Entangle, Silence, Death Mark, stuff like that, can end up being decent. The fact I have to give up your turn for is not ideal, but it's perfectly fine to kind of offset your damage earlier on in the game, especially if you're running something like what you'd realistically be running it with, which is Vinoxia. So wasting your turn once to go cast this to go get some negative effects on the enemy team and just hope to gamble that it works on like Freeze or something similar can be worthwhile. So in that kind of context, it's fine. But if you have access to Takshaka, this is never going to be on your team ever under any circumstance, unless you want Green Link, I guess. Because what's the other alternatives for Green Link? Let me go back to Mrs. Scales real quick. Is it the best option for Green Link there? It might be. Though in other instances, you might just be better with a Bog Strider with double green banner. But if you were to hypothetically do Green Link, that's blue, that's purple, this is red, that's blue, this is green. Yeah, because this is the only other green option, it is technically the best Green Link option in this kingdom. So if you specifically want a Green Link in order to feed more mana into something that is Mrs. Skills related. So of course, a lot of things in Mrs. Skills end up creating green. You have things like Takshaka, you have things like the Cobra's Curse, you have things like the Vinoxia that all end up creating green, most of them into themselves. So this is the most viable Green Link thing you can do with them. And of course, most of those end up doing true damage as well, so it has that double true damage synergy. So yeah, it's not awful. It's only going to be used in low rarity teams, because at high rarity, there's no reason to put it into a team ever. You would get way more value just from doing a Bog Strider, as we did with the high rarity team there. But yeah, it's for low rarity, it's perfectly fine. Ends up offsetting. You can just chip them down to Marilith range, so you guarantee get the kill. using Vinoxy as your primary damage source, then get like your freeze and hopefully something else useful, and still using Bog Strider for mana accumulation. But you have an extra green to go into it, which will flex, gives you some more flex room for what you could do your banner. And like in this case, we went for the +3 red so that we can get the Bog Strider in 1 turn or the Marilith in 2 to have 2 different options instead of 1. So it kind of allowed us by having that extra green link, so we didn't have to double green on banner, which allowed us to go deeper into red for Marilith. So yeah, it's not bad. Only for lower rarity, but it's actually a good troop. I just wish I had some extra turn potential, because it does auto end its turn after you do its ability. But who knows, maybe you'll get free, so it won't matter as much if you end up landing the freeze on the enemy team. And I guess the only other thing to mention is campaigns. Still relatively early in the campaign, so if you want to finish out any of these tasks, of course you still have a whole another 9 weeks to do so. It's only the 2nd weekend. However, of course you do get all these rewards immediately once you do those. So if you need some brown deed books, if you need the glory medal to go upgrade something, similar things, if you need any of these for any reason, you do get the rewards immediately. It's not like the campaign pass where you have to wait, you know, every single week. You can only earn 100 stars per week. So for those rewards, you have to wait quite a while before you end up getting them. But everything for campaign tasks, you get them all immediately the second you do any of these objectives. So if you still want to go and claim any of those early, yeah, you can rush those down. Otherwise, you'll probably naturally get almost every single one of these over the next 9 weeks. With the only exception being the orc kill one. I did go on my way a little bit this last week just so I wouldn't have to worry about it. But if you do find that your orc kills are like at 0 star right now and you only have like 20-30 kills, you might want to consider killing some Groshnok. You can do it on any explore level. You just simply have to kill orcs. So yeah, you might want to consider doing that to offset it a little bit, as that is the least likely one to get done naturally. Everything else that's in there, you're going to get done pretty much by default, just by playing the game, just doing dailies, everything else. But this is the one that you probably will need to go out of your way for at least a little bit. But the easiest way is just spam down Groshnok. Or the other option, of course, is wait until there's an orc restriction in PvP. You can also do it that way while getting PvP rating. I don't think people normally choose orc that often, but it might be a little bit more commonly picked since it is the kill objective for the next, 9 weeks. But otherwise, just go all in on Groshnok. You'll be good to go. Anyways, guys, I'll wrap it up for now. If you still have any other questions, feel free to leave them in the comment section below. All the teams we went over are in the description and pinned comment if you want to go and copy paste any of them. And I hope you all have a wonderful, wonderful week. Goodbye, everyone. And thanks for watching.